All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to help trauma therapists be their incredible selves, to be human, to be real, not just a clinician. I'm a big believer in who we are is more important than what we know. And this requires cultivating authenticity, genuineness, and vulnerability, and that requires intention. You can learn more about my courses and workshops by going to thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. Let's get started. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast, and I am thrilled to have back Esther Goldstein. Esther, welcome.
So excited to be here. Guy has been someone who is part of my trauma therapist training experience. So I'm excited to be here and so much respect.
Appreciate that. So Esther first joined us on episode 348. Super excited to have her back. She's a licensed clinical social worker in the 5 towns and surrounding areas. As a trauma specialist, trauma educator, and founder of Integrative Psychotherapy, her goal is to make sure that her clients are set up with just the right customized therapeutic experience to help them along the healing journey. She comes to this field first as a fellow human who appreciates human struggles, unknowns, and challenges, and her approach to therapy is highly collaborative and integrative. She says, it's about you, your life, your goals, and how I can be a strong, skillful support to help you navigate whatever you're facing. Esther, welcome back.
Thank you.
So before we get going here, remind everyone where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I'm originally I grew up I was born in Canada, and then I was in Brooklyn for some time, then Rockland County, which is one of the suburbs in New York. Then I grew up here in Long Island, which is where I live now. I was in Israel for 5 years. I did a postgrad at Hebrew U. And now I'm back in the 5 towns in Long Island in New York. Yeah, like an hour from New York City.
Explain to people what the 5 towns is.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so there's 5 towns. It's kind of known to be these small community life, but it's kind of grown a lot. It's in Nassau County. So the 5 towns are Lawrence, Cedarhurst, Woodmere, Hewlett, and Inwood. It's part of the South Shore, so we just call it the 5 towns. But I live in Woodmere, and my practice is in Cedarhurst. So awesome.
So I'm originally from New York and lived in Long Island for a little bit, and that just sounds like the LI Long Island Express, the the train.
The next stop is Hewlett. We're heading towards Cedarhurst. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So welcome back. So what are we going to talk about today? You told me before, but share with our audience.
Yeah, I want to talk about this topic. I mean, there's so many different topics and there's so much wisdom that you have that I kind of want to interview you. But I do want to talk today about the fact that when it comes to emotional healing or trauma healing, oftentimes we get sicker before we get better.
Okay. What does that mean? What do you mean?
What I mean is, so I actually have this, I don't know if you saw, but I created this like a training for my staff called Trauma Therapist Training. And I just created a lot of content and information and I opened it up to the public. And yesterday in the meeting, we were talking about some of the attendees were talking about the fact that sometimes their clients, when they reach out for help, are doing okay. And then as they start engaging in healing work and going a little deeper, they become more symptomatic, or they were okay and they're reaching out for help and they're symptomatic. And they were just confused because it's like, doesn't therapy or healing or any kind of emotional awareness process isn't the promise, especially for marketing, to heal? Come to EMDR and in 3 to 5 sessions, all of your flashbacks and anxiety will be poof gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So give us some details here.
Okay.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that true?
Yeah. So I really wanted to talk about it because then we ended up having a conversation about ourselves and commitments that we've made in our own lives or areas in our own lives where we feel strong or sensitive. And I was sharing how in some areas of my life, I can feel really solid and in other areas I can be fragile or be tending to an area of my life. The reason is when it comes to, let's say, specifically to trauma healing, right? Or any kind of looking at something, right? I always say, like, let's say you have like a boo-boo, you have a Band-Aid, you got a little, you got a scratch, and then there's bacteria. And then there might be an infection growing, right? You just cover it up with a Band-Aid because it's painful. Let's say you're outside and you're hiking for a few hours, or for some people, a few days. And so you just put a Band-Aid on it for temporary, right? Relief. It's not like a life-threatening situation. And you get back home and you could either leave the Band-Aid on it, or it's like, this is either turning into an infection and there's pain and it's making me itchy, or you can leave the Band-Aid on there. So if you want to take it off, you're going to clean it out. Right. And the cleansing process, it's really painful. Usually you put on peroxide, or right, like you're putting something on that's cleansing it out. It doesn't feel good. And when it comes to trauma healing, it's like you're looking at an issue, you're looking at a pain, you're looking at something that, isn't working so well. And so it hurts. And people sometimes say, wait, why am I doing this? Why don't I just leave the Band-Aid on? And we'll talk about different Band-Aids that all of us or our clients or just humans use. And essentially, it's like we clear it out. There's pain, but essentially you're cleaning it out so you can put a new gauze on top of it, allow skin to come on top of that and to heal and to grow thicker or just healthier skin without the infection.
Yeah. I mean, I actually entirely agree with what you're saying. I know in my own life.
For you. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. Well, healing is, what does healing mean? What does that mean? I think it really helps to even define what this means, but even just for me, I've been going through some stuff in my life recently, and you're like, okay, I need to get healed. I need to get better. And just to put one foot in front of the other, we can extrapolate this to trauma therapy in a sense. As a client, as a person who is healing, you need just to exist, just to move forward. And to do that, you kind of you manage. But to move further on in the healing process, it requires a certain self-awareness, which requires getting in there and looking at things and being willing to do that. And that's hard.
It's really hard. It's so interesting. Somebody said something like, what if you don't want to do the work? I'm like, do you think therapy is always fun? And let's not even talk about therapy, right? You're saying like you're navigating some stuff, and I do think it's a great idea to define healing, which I would love to do with you in a minute. But just showing up to life with a level of emotional awakeness can be like gut-wrenchingly painful, right? And it's like, oh, how do I even put that one foot in front of the other? It's not this sexy, like, I'm healing, ba-da-da-da-da, right? It usually doesn't feel that way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing easy. I mean, just to exist in life, it's hard. Things are hard. Life is hard. And it takes a lot of courage to be someone who's experienced trauma and to pick up the phone and to walk into someone's office. Because oftentimes as a client, when you're first reaching out, you don't know what the hell's going to happen. You don't know what's going to go on.
Yeah.
And hopefully you're in good hands with an experienced clinician. So how did this come about, this idea for you?
The talking about how healing takes pain. Just so we define healing for a minute, because I love that you said that. I want to just define it as the process of someone choosing to consciously to look at a part of themselves or something in their life so they can make a change. And it might feel like you have a choice. Like maybe you have a partner that says, well, you're really not present, or maybe you notice that you're drinking too much alcohol, or maybe you're feeling kind of stuck in life, or maybe it doesn't feel like it's a choice. Maybe you hit like a really high where you're just very anxious, irritated, can't sleep, or maybe you're hitting a low and you're just not feeling good. And so really, I would say the word healing, or maybe just being, right, for many of us, is a matter of that there is a choice where either you can be where you're at, or you're making a choice to take that step, whatever that step might be. Mm-hmm. The step might be to even acknowledge that there is a pain. The step might be to pick up the phone. The step might be to leave a therapist who's not right for you, right? The step might be to read a blog when people have been telling you to get curious, or for yourself to look at yourself in the mirror. But I think to simplify healing, it's really about tending to symptoms, right? Life is really just a matter of like being able to exist with the painful and the joyous. And some of our chapters of our lives are more painful, and some of the chapters of our lives are more joyous. And I don't like when people say, go to therapy so all the pain goes away and all the joy comes back. Well, that's just not life, right?
Right.
I think it's about, right, like you said, continuing to show up and to have those moments of joy when they do come in, or to invite them. But you said, why did I bring this topic up? Honestly, because it's something that I've been looking at in my own life as a human being. And also, like, you probably, I'm sure you have this as well. Like, we're all doing this thing called humanity. None of us can outrun each other in the human race, right? Like, I remember asking some consultants in a training, like, but so once it's rumbly and tumbly life, like, when do I get to the plateau? And one of my consultants, she was like, never. And I was like, no, come again. When? And she's like, never. So I was like, no. But I think that in my own experience, right, of being a human and a therapist and someone who's connecting with other therapists, there's real human conversations of our clients' journeys, but also our own.
Mm-hmm.
What is this thing called life, right? How do you do life well? And as I've evolved, like, I think it took a number of years of being a therapist and then being in my own therapy, but really, like, getting access to knowledge, which I know you do so much on here, which I want to thank you for sharing with the world. Yeah, really, about trauma, is like, I had a deeper layer of healing and awareness that I was doing for myself. And it felt so uncomfortable. And even now, like, there's pieces where I'm like, it's not shiny and glossy, but there's a level of awakeness and realness that is the gift of just doing the work, or being an emotionally awake person. So I wanted to, and I wanted to bring up the conversation, because I know so many times clients reach out and they say, like, isn't therapy supposed to be making me feel better? And they feel lost or confused. And I think just giving people knowledge about the process of change or healing, or looking at your life, secrecy or shame or struggles, or just like reality, can be a mixed bag, and how to still keep plowing through. So really, my message is about hope in the process.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. What is your take? What have you experienced with your fellow clinicians or the people you work with? How do they sit with this idea that therapy isn't always, rainbows and butterflies, and it's not easy? I mean, are you seeing other therapists or the people you're working with or training saying, really, or what?
Yeah, it's very painful. I think that when we are therapists, or when we're people who have people reaching out to us, we need to be dancing in two different platforms. On the one hand, it's like, I'm here with your pain, and either, like, I'm here with you and I see that we're about to notice something that has emotional pain, and I'm almost tiptoeing myself to walking towards that, even though that's really what's going to allow you relief. Or you're in pain and I actually want to help you reduce some of the way that your body is experiencing it, because it's so intense. Or you're deep in it and, like, I'm going to hold your hand as we move through it. So who is it that said, I mean, a few of the expert therapists talk about how, like, really being a trauma therapist is that you're being impacted by a stranger's story, right? Like, your story is changing me. It's engraving a story, a really meaningful story and experience in my life. So there's being with the pain, and then there's being with possibility. And I think holding that dance and holding both of those is a real challenge. And I'll tell you why the challenge is there. Not just because we all come into the therapy field because we have our own healing that we need to do. Like, anyone who I know who's in the field, like wounded healers, some more acknowledge it and some more engage in their healing than others. But I think it also makes us confront, right? So there's this piece of, I want to take your pain away, but I want to take it away temporarily, but also really help you engage if you're ready for the longer term healing. And to give you some hope as well to get through. But I think there's the second layer where, like, in this conversation I had yesterday with some clinicians, they said, we're in this because we want to talk about our clients, but we're realizing that there's so much that it's making us look at ourselves. I'm like, oh, there should be like a warning, right? But it's also because then it makes us look at, like, working in this field or working with people who have, trauma, it's very evocative. It's very emotionally evocative, where it's almost like it brings up some of our own dormant stuff, right? And so it's like, how do I sit with pain and how do I sit with hope? So I notice sometimes the struggle of like, should I walk with this person towards that? And obviously some of these are clinical questions of, making sure your client's nervous system is regulated and you are, giving them the right skills. At the same time, really what all clients need is that steady grounding voice that says, I'm not afraid. Mm-hmm. We're going to figure this out together and I'm going to hold your hand. But it's a very uncomfortable experience for many. So yeah, I do find that it's, walking those two lines that can be tricky sometimes.
So yeah. You've obviously been doing this for a while. You have experience. How did you get to this point? Was it when you first got into this field, was this your attitude?
No.
What was it like? What was your perspective? I
came into the field to help people's pain go away. I thought I have a huge heart and I'm just going to smile and tell them how amazing they are and how no matter what, like, difficult times, the quote, like, hard times don't last, right? Tough times don't last, but tough people do. We do, but then we have stars and then we have to, live through life and love and being and, work on our nervous systems. And it's not so like, oh, you survived, now move on. I think this is really more a story of my own self and my own learning. But really, I do have to tell you, Guy, that your podcast really gave me so many gifts. Like there were so many times I was driving back and forth. I was getting consultation from Dr. Bradfoot, who's a psychiatrist at Montefiore. And then I was getting like consultation from Lynette Danilchuk. I remember just driving in the car, always listening to your podcast, and the wisdom of so many of the trauma educators ringing in my ear were so helpful, and they still are. So I really want to thank you because you're one of like the first voices that I am just saying like that you brought so many like so much wisdom together. No, I didn't think that. I thought that I think I mentioned this. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And to speak up for children of adoption or divorce. And then, but I wanted to be a mom as well. And I think it was probably like a fantasy. Like I wanted to be like some some impressive, strong woman in the courtroom or like a CIA agent, like that power woman. Mm-hmm. And then I realized power is not really a matter of like how you show up, but it's an energy and who you are and what you're conveying. So then I went into the field of social work. And yeah, even as a social worker, I thought I would just be like a big loving soul. I think what really gave me this wisdom is humanity and humility and experiencing my own healing journey. I know I shared last time about how there were people in my extended family and community who struggled with addiction and how I looked at that, I first specialized in working with addiction, and then I realized that the core of addiction, the difference between people who, hold sobriety to some of them who keep relapsing, sometimes, there's underlying trauma, childhood trauma or pain. So there's that piece. But really, as I just engaged in like being more adult and listening to my clients' stories and seeing what helped them and what didn't help them, and I think just like eating a lot of humble cake and also like being very human in my own experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm curious if you can even get more specific. Yeah. Can you recall a specific instance that made you think, wait a minute, I've got to shift here. Having a big heart and a great smile isn't enough, really. Can you think back to a specific incident or time when you're like, okay, I need to maybe do my own inner work here. Something needs to shift.
Yes. Let me just, I love this question. I started working with clients and I realized that I wanted more. And it wasn't just, I remember one of my friends said to me, like, you're on this like trip of just getting all the latest trainings. And she's like, you're just drinking the Kool-Aid. And I said, no, it's not the Kool-Aid. I'm looking for the true way to heal people. And I have to find what resonates for me. and my story and just what lands on me from a trainer who I honor and for something that helps me feel more comfortable in my own mind and body, because I don't just want to learn skills.
Right.
So I think it was when I was working with some clients that there were some clients that were doing well with like talk therapy, but I found that when I started working with clients who I was seeing for a while, and they started sharing more about their story. And I started developing that sixth sense of like nuance of like, there's more to the story,
Mm-hmm.
and there's more to the pain, or there might be some kind of like neglect or abuse or sexual trauma or family secrecy that I'm feeling something deeper than a question can ask them or that an intervention could boom on, right? And it was more about like, I need to be able to move in deeper into the relational aspect in a way that's very healthy and therapeutic to the client. I was reading Kathy Steele's book, and I was reading a lot of the books on dissociation when I realized that, okay, so I was working with a few clients, here it is, who had dissociative symptoms. And I remember trying to use my psychotherapy skills, even skills I had in EMDR. And then I realized that my savior complex, the part of me that thought like I'm going to help heal them, was getting in the way of really good work happening because I was scared. I was really scared. Like, can I really help you? Your symptoms are really strong. And then I reached out for consultation. And I remember a consultant was talking about like, we're not just looking at you as the therapist and your client as the patient, but can we look at you as a person and then you as a professional and both of those parts of you and then your client.
Mm-hmm.
And I think starting to realize like the part of me that so desperately wanted to help them heal was really a part of me that was feeling powerless. And it was about really noticing and owning my humanity. And then it wasn't about power or saving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was about being in my own story, right? My own maybe fantasy of someone coming to save me. And I think that pushed me. Then I ended up switching therapists at that point because I was like, I was being challenged to engage in the process of psychotherapy from a much more, I don't know, humane, not just humane, but deeper standpoint. And so I started engaging in my own therapy with someone who I felt like could really hold me in a real way. You know, wasn't like I can save the day, I have all these trainings, but helped me see parts of myself. And then automatically, as I started like looking at the different aspects of myself that maybe I was ignoring without realizing or didn't know were there, my clients energetically started sharing more. And I felt so much more confident and trusting in their healing process.
Mm.
And I think that really conveyed and made a difference. That doesn't mean their symptoms went away, but I was, you know, there's like somebody holds your grip and then there's like a strong grip of not like I need to be your savior, but I got you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what we're doing. And then there's very clear boundaries. So that's when I feel like I start, you know, people tell me, oh, you have a name or you have a gift. And I'm like, no, it's really just that I started doing my own work and I got better. Like when I started being able to grip in like I got you, like I'm not frightened by your symptoms. I'm getting good consultation. I'm learning about myself, which is not what I've said to them. I think that's really what shifted. As I did. I don't know if that's specific.
It was. I just love the way you articulated that. Why? And that's hard to do. Why is that hard to do? Why is that challenging for many therapists to do?
Very scary, Guy. It's really scary to look at ourselves in the mirror, especially, you know, I always say at 18 years old, I had everything figured out. It's been a while since then. And it's interesting. I think that like becoming a therapist, of course, I had a certain level of self-awareness and wisdom. And I did learn some skills. But I think really looking at ourselves in the mirror, like being a parent has been a very humbling experience. Like my child, relationships in my life, parenting and many other ones have really been spaces and places that make me pause and make me stop. And I'm gifted to have some relationships that make me ask questions, right? And then owning like choices and processes. I think it's hard because it's scary. It's scary to look at. I don't know if I think it's uncomfortable. I think the unknown could be scary.
Right.
But I think the little secret that I found for myself is that it's scarier not to.
Right.
I think it's scarier not to know ourselves. I think it's scarier not to do the work. But I will also say that it's also, I think, a really lonely road. Like I find that I have my few people in the professional and personal world that like they have that emotional vocabulary or they've gone on their own journey of awareness, but a lot of people don't want to, or, they haven't been called to it. But yeah, I think that sometimes, look, we come into the therapy world because we want to be helpers. Why would anyone want to go back to the place of vulnerability?
Exactly.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I think, what I have found and in my own experience is inherent, I think, within the therapeutic relationship, there's an imbalance, generally speaking, right? The therapist is up here, clients down here. The therapist has all this training. They have all this knowledge. The client has come to the therapist with the idea that things are going to get better. And takes and also important within that is the therapist's ability to define their role, their goal. Why are they doing this? Like you said, you wanted to help, and that has to be defined, clearly defined. Because if a therapist is coming to a client saying, I'm going to take away your pain, right? I interviewed someone and they said, and they weren't talking to me specifically, but how dare you try to take someone else's pain away? That's not your job. And I was like, what? Your job, just as you were saying, Esther, is to walk alongside them, to grasp, to hold their hand and walk with them. It's a very different perspective and orientation. And like you're saying, it requires the ability to look at ourselves. And that's hard. What? I've got to look at I'm here to fix you.
I'm here to fix you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the being real with ourselves, like, look, when we're in the field, we are to a certain degree, awake to who we are. Obviously with varying degrees, some of us have histories of the past or even more recently of things that are difficult, right? Like people have health struggles or family dynamics or financial stories, and I think that there's this piece of like, how am I holding my story? Right. And can I be very human in this process? And can I own my vulnerability while I own my clients? And of course, still being like, a skilled guide in the process, because of course, like there's the boundaries and that clarity. But I love that you interview those kinds of people of how dare you take away the pain? I think
that was really early on when I didn't know anything. And, I thought that was a laudable goal, desire to help take away someone's pain, and this person said, when you have to realize when your client steps into your room, they've begun their healing journey long before they've entered your office. And you have to, and I was just like, I had no idea what the hell was going on. But this process of, you're talking a lot about being human. And it's such a different approach, a different perspective. How do you, quote unquote, teach or guide the people you work with to do that, to look at that?
Yeah. I can't make it mandatory, like to only hire people at the practice who are in therapy or have been in therapy. At the very same time, the people who, let's say, are at the practice are people who I work with or who I feel confident, overseeing their work and referring to are people who I know have consciously made the choice to get to know themselves and to get to know their inner worlds. And it's kind of this piece that I took from, I guess, that point in my life when I was looking at how can I really be useful or impactful. And it was less about doing and it was more about being, but the being is actually harder than the doing, which I think many of us know in this thing called life. But I think what I often look at is this parallel process between, so I'm, let's say, teaching or I'm getting to know them and getting, that there's this process of the human part of them, right? Like their own life, their own story. Then there's the professional them, and honoring both of theirs. I always get curious about what's your why? Like, why are you in the field? And what's your promise to yourself? Because I think we come into the field really first with a promise to ourselves, and then second with a promise to the people that we work with. I think my promise to myself was really understanding and learning about the underpinnings of certain mental health struggles and giving myself knowledge and truth that wasn't out there, many years ago. And that's a gift that I've given myself, and also to connect myself with like very wise people, mentors, a therapist that like has been incredible. So I think there's like promising, like, are you aligned with your own integrity, with your own self?
Right.
Then with the clients you work with, because they feed off of each other. Right. And it doesn't mean that you have to be in a perfect place in life and, have everything resolved, but there's a level of, I think like awakeness that, when clients sometimes say, this person's so skilled, what is it? What's the training? And often when I hear about the therapists who have the it factor is that they hold themselves, or they're honest with themselves, and they've been through just more realness. And I think and then we pick that up, right? When you talk to someone, you could tell how much they can hold, how much space they have, capacity,
Definitely.
honesty. Yeah. So that's felt.
That's awesome. I want to remind everyone that I'm speaking with Esther Goldstein. Esther, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
My website, it's integrativepsych.co.
Okay. And what do you do? I mean, obviously you see clients. What else? Are you offering workshops, or what else?
Yeah, I do. I love workshops. Actually, I was just invited to one. There's a treatment center. They do workshops for therapists. So kind of like teaching therapists skills to use real-time in session with clients who are activated, working with anxiety or trauma symptoms. I have a training that I have for therapists, an online training. And I have a practice. Our practice is, what I love about our clinical practice is that the therapists have a really range of services. We have a dance movement therapist, two art therapists. One's actually, we're partnered with NYU with the art therapy program, because I really think that trauma healing, and they're all trained in EMDR and somatic and parts work, but I really find that healing happens in creative ways. I'm actually writing a book with New Harbinger on EMDR and anxiety. And my staff is like, they're like, Esther, call it EMDR for rebels. Because I always say, like, you need to learn EMDR, but then you have to know how to use it with parts work. And it's not just like the generic EMDR. So I don't know if they're going to approve of that title, but so I'm working on that. And that's how people can find me.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned an online course for therapists. Give us some more specifics about that. Who's it for specifically?
Yeah, so it's a trauma training. So essentially, I created, like, it's 10 modules. It's an online training program for therapists or psychiatric nurse practitioners. Honestly, I had a few people. I had somebody from Iceland who's working at a drug treatment center, and she was talking about raising awareness for her team. And then somebody who was working with veterans and with PTSD and opening her own center. It's for therapists who want to either refresh their knowledge in being trauma informed, or therapists who have learned about trauma or are seeing clients in their practice, but they want to take them to the next level. So we're working on the CEU process for approval. It's a 6-month program where there's videos. We go through like the making of a trauma therapist, knowing your why, the history, evolution. And then there's like assessments, interventions. There's a lot of exercises that include like somatic and parts work.
Wow.
Honestly, it's like a training that I needed 10 years ago. And I just felt like, so there's a training aspect and then there's consultation. The community is honestly, I think, the most powerful piece, how people get to know other therapists around the world. And they kind of, even beyond the group, it's like just supporting each other and knowing that each other exists. So
awesome. We'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Esther, awesome. Got to have you back again. I love talking to you. Thank you so much for being here.
I'll look forward to it.
All right.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.